It's been a week of high drama at the top of Volkswagen, Europe's largest car maker. Chief Executive Martin Winterkorn appeared to lose the confidence of his chairman Ferdinand Piëch, only to be backed a week later by VW's senior directors. But by understanding his history at the top of VW, it's clear that Mr Piëch plays a long game, and so the drama may not be over yet. Here's how it started.
The crisis erupted at Volkswagen on Friday when Volkswagen's chairman Ferdinand Piëch distanced himself publicly from the chief executive Martin Winterkorn. Now, his reasons for doing so were unclear, but what immediately happened was that shareholders and employee representatives came out in support of Mr Winterkorn, which left the chairman looking unusually isolated. Volkswagen shares have come under pressure due to the leadership crisis, but Mr Piëch won't worry too much about that. His top priority has always been his automotive legacy. Volkswagen now has 12 brands, and that gives it immense power. Mr Piëch wants to make sure it stays that way.
Above all, Ferdinand Piëch was signalling his resistance to former protégé Mr Winterkorn succeeding him as chairman. And if you look back at VW's history since Mr Piëch himself became chief executive, you can see how he's used this brutal tactic before.
Now, as for Mr Piëch's personality, he's rather a cold person. He doesn't allow too many people to come close to him, but once you are close to him, he's incredibly loyal. He tends to run companies by a lot of antagonism, permanently getting rid of people, keeping people on their toes. One thing you have to say is, whatever his sort of Machiavellian management style, he's been a fantastic automotive engineer. In some ways, he's almost too good. When he looks at a product, he's not always thinking about profitability.
The most high-profile ousting by Mr Piëch was of Bernd Piëch's who succeeded him as chief executive.
Mr Piëch never really seemed to like him, and in 2006 he started to undermine his authority. First of all, he imposed a Labour director against the will of Mr Piëch, against the will of the shareholder representatives on the board, and then a few weeks later he let out this little comment in a newspaper interview that Mr Piëch's getting a new contract, it was an open issue. Now, as it happened, Mr Piëch's actually did get that new contract. It looked like Mr Piëch had lost, but Mr Piëch, he always plays a long game, and he came back a few months later at the end of 2006, and Mr Piëch's was out of the way, and Mr Winterkorn, who was a Piëch loyalist, was installed as chief executive.
Mr Piëch's ruthless streak came out again in his battle with the Porsche family and cousin Wolfgang Porsche over control of Volkswagen.
The Porsche and Piëch families together control more than 50% of the voting stock in Volkswagen. So it was very interesting that on Sunday, Wolfgang Porsche, the cousin of Ferdinand Piëch, essentially pledged his support to Mr Winterkorn. The two sides of the family have been divided in the past, however, most notably in 2008. That was when Porsche tried to take over the much larger Volkswagen. On that occasion, Mr Piëch emerged victorious.
However, Mr Piëch, who's just turned 78, has found himself isolated in this latest battle against Martin Winterkorn, the man once seen as his heir and successor. At an emergency meeting, Mr Winterkorn received the backing of key stakeholders, including Wolfgang Porsche, and they also proposed a contract extension. Even so, Mr Winterkorn has a mixed record at the helm of the world's second largest car maker.
Sales have almost doubled since 2007 when he took over. The company is rivaling Toyota to be the biggest car maker in the world, and the share price has gone up by almost 150% over that time. But on the negative side, the core VW passenger brand has got pretty low operating margins, and the company's initiated a €5 billion cost-cutting program to try and turn that around. There are some people who say technical innovation at the company, something that Mr Piëch really values, has slowed despite Volkswagen spending huge sums on R&D. But probably the biggest criticism is the US, where sales have fallen back to sort of close to 2011 levels, and Mr Winterkorn himself has accepted that the company's probably been a bit complacent in that market.
Mr Winterkorn appears safe for the moment, and Mr Piëch's motives against him remain unclear, but judging from the history, it's far from certain whether Mr Winterkorn still has a chance to succeed Mr Piëch as chairman when he steps down from that role in 2 years' time.
Mr Piëch is above all concerned about securing his legacy, and I think it's in that respect that we should see the conflict with Mr Winterkorn. Now, there's no saying who's going to win. There's no saying that Mr Piëch will win this time, but I think the history, his character shows that you should never write Mr Piëch off.